So I'm part of an organization called the B Team, which consists of 30 global business leaders. And I think all of us feel it's time for business leaders to speak out. First of all, I think all of us agree it's not the time for neutrality, that Russians' invasion is unprovoked and unacceptable, and that we have to do something about it. Now, number one, I think almost with one voice, we say that there's a need for increase in military aid. NATO government should immediately authorize the transfer of the weapons that Ukraine has asked for. And secondly, it's really important that we get rid of our dependence on Russian oil, gas, and coal, and we must do that immediately. And we cannot continue to send billions of dollars to Russia to fund their war. And then we have come up with a number of different ways that we believe that can be done without too much pain for Western businesses or Western people.
And we'll come back to the mechanics of some of that thinking there, especially on energy conservation. But I want to pick you up on that point you made about the interplay between public and private business leaders and governments, because with all due respect, you're not an elected political official, but you do have a lot of influence, of course, as a very successful entrepreneur. So how are you saying that businesses can work with government here?
So, what we're saying is that if we can reduce the West's dependence on fuel by, say, just 10%, that will free up something like 3 billion barrels of fuel, and that will be plenty to make sure that countries like Germany do not have to import anymore. So the ways we're suggesting you go about that is encourage everybody to reduce the speed they drive their cars. Now, if everybody did it by 10 miles an hour throughout the IEA countries, that would reduce sufficient amount of fuel to sort out those countries who are importing fuel from Russia. At the same time, it would have the beneficial effect of driving the price of fuel down, because everybody's paying far too much for their fuel at the moment. So if every company and every individual just took a little bit of, like maybe cutting their air conditioning by 1%, cutting their heating by 1%, cutting the speed they drive cars by, say, 10%, businesses, just cutting out, if you're an airline, maybe a couple of routes that are not making you a lot of money. And you spread it out across all businesses and everybody around the world. The price of oil would come down dramatically, and we would not have to continue to send checks to Putin anymore, and hopefully it would help bring an end to this war quicker.
So it's a very much sort of everyone coming together to help the war effort. But how much of this should be laid on citizens who are already dealing with a cost of living crisis in many countries? How much should be government-led and business-led?
I think the government needs to, instead of, say, having 70 miles an hour on the motorways, for the next year, they should say, in order to support Ukraine, we're dropping the speed limits to 60. And that means that all of you are contributing to dropping the speed limits and helping bring this war to an end. At the same time, by doing that, it is very likely that the fuel that you will then be buying will be a lot cheaper, because if you can actually reduce the demand for fuel fairly dramatically by making every company reduce the amount of fuel they use by 5 to 10%, and individuals by things like speed limits or air conditioning drop by 1%, then the demand for fuel is going to come down dramatically, and therefore the price of fuel will come down dramatically, and therefore the cost of living will come down dramatically. So, as a business leader and as a group of business leaders, we believe this is a win-win for everybody, and in particular, it's a win-win for Ukraine that has to, there are young people fighting for us effectively in Ukraine and dying every day with money against Putin, who's getting his war chest from us buying his oil and his coal and his gas. That just needs to stop as fast as possible.